LGBTQ approach and an LGBTQ perspective in the Aquarian age. However, contrary to the beliefs, the Aquarian age can be defined in others believe the Aquarian age began when electricity was created. Others believe the Aquarian age began when the world entered the 20th century. Some believe it's the 21st century. Others believe it began when Nibiru came, planet Nibiru, that's in 2012. Others believe the Aquarian age began when Obama was president. So there are very many views. And for today, we're going to look at the language reconstruction that is taking place because of the age. And so I was just trying to show you that there are many the understanding of the Aquarian age is varies to very many people, but scientifically, it is a 2,150 years gap from the other age, and the ages are counted in retrograde. So the first age was the Joseph. Sorry, I'm talking about something I read recently that was very interesting. It was the Pisces age, the Piscean age, and in the Piscean age, um, it it ended in the 19th century. So when you minus 2,000 years from then, um, it will land you roughly to a few years, 100 years before the first century, century. According to Christianity, when Jesus Christ was going for disciples, when you see a man carrying a pitcher, then that is where we're going to have the Last Supper. Now, of course, theology is so wide. Oh my God, I can talk about it the whole forever. Yes, the whole day. Now, when he did that, he saw the pitcher, the man carrying the jar of water. And they said he will go there and will have the Last Supper where he goes. So the house the man went to was where they had the Last Supper. Now, according to astrologers who study astrotheology, that was Jesus pointing to the next age. So he said the next age is Aquarius. Because when you see a man carrying water, that is Aquarius, you're saying. Now, why was Jesus in Pisces? Is because the proof that Jesus Christ was in Pisces is because in the early church, the sign for Jesus Christ, for them to mark a church, they used to, instead of using a cross, they used to use fish. They used to use fish. So every time you see fish, you see Jesus Christ. And the early church was so persecuted, especially when people started knowing who Christians were. They were thoroughly persecuted and they went to underground. There is no difference between LGBTQ persons and the early church. They went through the same crisis. The way Christians were persecuted in the beginning of their religion is the same way LGBTQ persons are persecuted. There is no difference whatsoever. So that's what Christians need to understand. Your religion went through crisis like LGBTQ persons. So you're supposed to happen. The early Christians, that is where they used to have service. In the tomb, the corpses were there. But they knew nobody could come to look for them there. So that's where they used to have their prayer services. Now, to show that there's a church meeting in the tomb, they used to make a marking of a fish. So Jesus Christ was a Pisces. He's the sign of Pisces. Then to make it even more Piscean, the miracle of the two fishes, the boy, when he came and they wanted to do what? To multiply the food for the people. Jesus Christ took the five loaves of bread and the two fishes and multiplied. So that act, that the two fishes was became Pisces, and the astrotheology looks at items. So when the astrotheologians read the gospel, they noticed something, that the Bible, especially the New Testament, was very astrotheological, because why was it two fishes that this boy had? First of all, that's what astrotheologians ask themselves. Then why was it Jesus pointed at a man carrying a jar of water, that the lamb, the sacrifice of the lamb was because Abraham sacrificed a ram, that instead of sacrificing Isaac, he sacrificed a ram that was caught in the thicket. So Abraham was in the age of Aries, and then Jesus was in the age of Pisces, because you go retrograde in reverse, you don't go forward. So Abraham was in the age of Aries, age of the ram, which he sacrificed. Then Jesus, who is the fish, was the age of Pisces, and then now we are coming to Aquarius, the age Jesus showed the disciples that that's the age we are going to. We are going to the Aquarian age. So I also take it that in my view, once Jesus ascended and left the earth, that's when we entered the Aquarian age. That's theologically speaking, I best ascended. Um, but but sorry, this may sound theological, but we don't want to make it so. It has to be, theology, philosophy, they are one. Scientifically speaking, and also in the 19th century. And why I've said very many theological events happened in the 19th century, just like science. To me, the best century in the world of humanity, the best, mine, you know, some people like certain centuries. My best century is the 19th century, because the things that happened in the 19th century were the telegram, the car, unbelievable. And then theologically, one of the weirdest Mormon church, it includes the SDA church, it includes all of these major denominations, even the Pentecostal movement, because the Wales revival began around the 1890s and spread on to 1900, and then the Azusa Street revival began at the beginning and at the end, the beginning of the 20th century and at the end of the 19th century. So that time, very weird things were happening in every area of the world. And I believe, to me, scientifically, the Aquarian age began in the 19th century. Now, we have been there ever since the 1800s till today. So, now for other people, they say no, it began in the year 2000. So, you can have what you need to understand about ages and about epochs of time. People have relative understandings about it all. And because of time can be measured geographically, like right now, climate change is an but it did not necessarily start in the Aquarian. The world is in trouble climatically. Now, secondly, is the time astrotheologically. You can measure time religiously. When you have feasts, you can measure time agriculturally. You can measure time meteorologically. That's the weather. So, like in winter, people don't work because it's snowy. Then in summer, people work, or summer people rest because it's a nice time to be out, depending. Those are meteorological calendars. So they're diverse calendars. This is why people have different views as to when the Aquarian age began. But um, the issue of language, because whenever you enter an age, the language changes. An age, the ruling language was even when Jesus Christ was crucified, all on his cross was INRI, INRI, and INRI means here is the King of the Jews. I can only remember the RI. I can't remember the Latin of the NIN, but the RI is Rex Iudeo, meaning the king of the Jews. Jews are Judeo in Latin, Iudeo. So, if I can remember the Bible story, I don't think they wrote in Greek because the time empire took over the world, they crushed. Latin was the language of the government. Greek was the language of the vulgar language. It was the common man's language. So Israelis did not understand Greek. Not all Israelis spoke Greek. Only very educated Jews. Though I have a feeling Jesus knew Greek. I remember seeing a story recently that Jesus was a Greek man. They could be right, but no, they're not right. I very funny newspaper. Nah, he wasn't Greek. He's a Jew. But what I'm trying to say, Greek, he could have known Greek because Greek was the common language of that time. And the reason why I'm saying this is because of the man Paul existed, lived in Damascus. Now, if you study the Bible very seriously and question it, you would wonder, why did Paul not know Jesus? Paul was not a baby of the Peters and the Jesus. Yes, he could have been. He was born around the same time Jesus was born. Where was Paul born? And he was a Benjamite. And then, where you can forgive Paul, he lived in Damascus. That was where he was based. And Damascus in Syria. It says that I think Paul used to travel to Israel once in a while whenever they have feasts, because Jews, whenever they have a feast, the males had to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. So it could be Paul may have met Jesus, but there are so many. That time Jews were still very many. They were staying at home, like da, so they had to be many, and they were very religious. So whenever the festivals begin, they would go. And remember, the Romans rebuilt their temple. They rebuilt the second temple, which was the temple of Jupiter, and but they gave it to the Jews because it was still built on the first temple that was built by Solomon. So they renovated it, and now they restored Israeli worship, and the Romans built it. So what could have happened is, and what was happening, every time there was a festival, the males would come 3 times a year. They go to Jerusalem and have it. Pharisee is a very proud person. He wants to show people, I really love the Lord, and I'm going to show people that I know how to do it. Pharisees were like that. So it could be Paul used to travel and he was in Jerusalem at the same time with Jesus. But because Jesus was a very common man, that's why his story is not really told very. Jesus outside the Bible. Yes. There's only one guy who wrote about him. That is Josephus. Josephus tried, but the way he wrote about him, it was so casual. It was just Jesus was just a political leader. So I have a feeling Jesus really spent time with the poor, and they are the ones who used to follow him. And because of this, because the writers of the Bible, especially the New Testament, they were rich people, educated. You know, one reason why Paul wrote the most letters is because he was a Pharisee, and Pharisees were rich. They were rich people. You see, when Paul was so rich, Paul, that's why he knew Greek. He could talk in it. He could write in it. He could dictate it. When you have dictation, you know, you're telling someone to write. You're a dictator. Yes, teachers do that a lot. So it's dictating. So he was a writer. He was and he was rich because being a Pharisee. Now contrast his disciples, the disciples of Jesus. They were poor. They were just fishermen, so they were not highly educated. Jesus, contrary to what people believe, Jesus was not illiterate. He could read. But his disciples, we don't see any writing of them reading. That's why, if there was, Peter would have read in the synagogue, but they couldn't. So, you see this interpretation of the Bible. Jesus was a clever guy who went and got below average or average guys who could, they as him. He was the one who was controlling them. So that's why he didn't pick Pharisees, because he knew he would have problems. You know, you don't pick. I have a friend of mine, and he asked me, "Whom do you hire for a job?" And I told him, "You hire what semi-literate person, because it's very easy to deal with them. You know, a very literate person, you hire a professor. People, they fear very well they can even control you. That's that's why knowledge is power. So most people hire guys whom they can control. That's why slavery is like. And speaking of slavery, it's Black History Month. I will do a video about that, but not today. Anyway, the so Jesus had disciples who him. So anyway, let's finish. We've talked about that enough. Now the problem. So what does this mean? Jesus could have been spending time with the poor people and not with the rich people. So when that happened, um, he was not. Of course, everybody was welcome. First of all, Jesus was an inclusive preacher. Anybody can listen to him, even his enemies. He let them listen to him, and when they asked him questions, he would answer. That's why the Pharisees, the rich men, used to come and see him. But they used to come and see him and question him. You see, most questions came from the educated and the rich. The questions never came from the poor. Because the poor, as Paul said, the poor, which was mostly the Jews at that time, but not all Jews are poor, just like not all Gentiles are rich. It's just that poor people like signs and wonders. That's what Paul said. Say Jews, if you want to attract a Jew, show him miracles, show him power. That one will make him happy. You'll make him believe you. But a Greek, show him knowledge. Show him you've read. You see, when Paul talked to King Festus, they were all marveled. They said, "This man has read." He's happy. He's reading. They didn't bring a sick person and tell him to heal. No, that was not their issue. Their issue issue was, do you have? And Paul had it. Because he was explaining Christianity to them. Even King Agrippa said, I think I may become one because of how he explained. So, all educated people, rich people, are moved more by knowledge. And the Jews, which at that time were poor, now Jews are very rich, some of them, majority of them. But that time they were the poorest because they were subjugated by very many colonial powers, suppressed them. So they were poor, but they were still able to survive economically, thanks to the eunuchs, the LGBTQ Jews who survived, and they were hired in palaces to do work. So those are the only ones who tried. But majority of Jews, because they were colonized, they were poor. Even when Jesus said, he said, asked the question, Peter asked it, and then Jesus said, children do not pay tribute. Children don't pay tax. So he was telling them, because the Roman Empire is not your father. That's what he was saying. So if it was your father, you would not pay tribute. Because citizens of the country that has colonized a country, they don't pay tax. They don't pay tribute. Tribute are conquered persons' tax to the conqueror. But so Jesus was telling Peter in I'm complicating it, that conquered persons pay tribute. And he said, we are conquered, but one day we'll be free. The Jews were conquered by the Romans. So he said, because we're conquered by them, we still have to pay tribute. Because if you don't pay tribute, you'll be arrested. And you don't have weapons to fight. Oh, when you read the Bible these days, it's so fun, because you see life. Jesus' disciples, they were his bodyguards, and they had weapons. Peter chopped off the person. And what I'm trying to tell you, the reason why the story of Jesus is not told by very many people is because he was with poor people. So he was, nobody would have written about Jesus. But because he was poor, nobody pays attention. So imagine going to tell a rich king like Herod and Pilate. They never knew Jesus. And he was in Jerusalem. So you wonder, why did these people not know this guy? He was poor. The people are rich people. Everybody knows a rich man. The name is known. Poor people, you don't even know. You don't even know when he was buried. So that's what happened to Jesus Christ. Jesus was a poor man. And he had very many disciples who are also poor. And not very poor, but middle class, lower middle class. That's why when Peter again told Jesus, because Jesus was being left, and he said, it seems you don't want to stay with me. You can go. I said, no, how can we go and we sold everything for you? So when we'll do another study about Jesus in the theological channel, not here, you will understand. We will look at the disciples as human beings. You see, when you watch a movie, you're supposed to have those senses. You sense the time. Put yourself in their shoes. It's not easy. You can do that. If you can't understand me, I can't force you to understand me. I will just let me be me. That's why I'm a philosopher. This is my life. And not everybody is a philosopher. And a philosopher. He taught daily for 3 years. Daily talking. Even what is written is just is a sample. It was a book written very fast. They just learned how to summarize. If they were to write everything, you'd even get bored. You'd not read. The New Testament would be a Bible on its own if they wrote everything. But they didn't write everything. They just wrote a few things in summary of the leader they had and they followed. Now, so why are we talking about this? It's because the whole Aquarian Piscean age is astrotheology. And astrotheology is found in almost every religion in the world, but is very strong in the ancient religions. So the reason why we've talked about Jesus almost 20 minutes is because the time he came to the earth, the ancient religions already had astrotheology. They already knew. They already knew everything. They have their words. So that's why it's very shocking that Jesus Christ was also alluding to meaning he was also an astrotheologian. He was a star theologian. He looked at the stars. Even the Hebrew nation was astrotheological because the seasons of agricultural seasons are controlled by the astrotheological calendar, because the astrotheological calendar is a solar calendar. It's the sun. You see, the deception in the use of the word astrotheological is actually solar theology, because the sun, solar, is a star. It's not a planet, it's a star. 12, the earth is forever facing the sun, but because it's so big, that's why I don't believe in flat earthers. The flat earthers believe the earth is flat. That's a lie. It's not flat, it's spherical. This earth is always with the sun. It is always with the sun. It's just that because it's spherical, are you seeing my hand? You see this back side of the hand? It is dark because it's not facing the light. Now when I turn it like this, are you seeing? It is light because it's facing the sun. So that's what happens to the world. Right now, America is still in darkness, especially California. Let's see. What time is it? 15 minus 6. No, no, 8, 15 minus 8. Yeah, they have come to morning. So Asia. Right now, India and parts of America, like New York, are seeing the sun. So because the earth is spherical, you see? So the earth is in the India is in darkness, but Africa, because the earth is rotating like that. So that's what happens. So um now those ones, then after that it's moving like this, then it moves, it goes around the sun, like my head. Let's say my head is the sun. So it's going around, goes back there, but as it's going around like that, it's so every time the months change, the sun enters an astrological house. Pisces, Taurus, Gemini, like that. It's entering every month, and there are 12 months in a year. Now, so what am I telling you? I'm telling you Christianity is astrotheological. It's a solar theology. All of the ancient theologies of the world are solar. Yes. The only one that is Islam. But did not really You see, Islam never paid attention to astrotheology, because they on the moon. They understood the moon more than the sun. But it doesn't mean they were not astrotheological. They are lunar. And the moon is not a star. That's what you need to understand. The sun is a star. The moon is not a star. It has no light. Yes, the moon depends on the to come to have light. So you see how I know if you want to become conspiratorial, lunar theologies are actually dark theologies. No wonder Islam is very cryptic and they hide things, you know. They don't like coming out. It's because they hide. They love darkness. Because there is no light the moon removes. The earth is dark. Without the sun, we are dark. See, the sun is so kind to us. It is brightening us up. Do you know why NASA can take pictures of the earth? It is because they never show you the dark black. It's darkness. They always show you the light side of the earth, where the sun is hitting the earth, and the satellite is going around the earth taking photos every day. So when it comes to the side of the earth where the beautiful pictures it's taking. So and the pictures are returned to us, and it's because the sun is shining. Without the sun, planets would be dark. And this is another thing we need to understand. They can be planets we because they don't have stars or they are very far from stars. But if we go close to those planets, you will see there's a wonderful. Okay, we've discussed the cosmology of everything and showed you that Christianity is a Johnny come late, you know. It's not an old religion. So, and I know Jesus knew astrotheology based on when he said, "You see the man carrying the pitcher? We're entering there." And he knew what he was saying. That's the next age we are in, the Aquarian age. And Aquarius, the constellation of Aquarius was already known at the time of Jesus. Jews already had Mazaroth. That is the astrology in Hebrew. It's Mazaroth. And they knew it. So the mistake people make, historians, theologians, they think these people like Jesus, Peter, especially Jesus and Paul, they were so bleak. They were so dumb about. They are not dumb. They are very clever people, especially Jesus. Very cunning man. Very cunning. Because that man could read and he could answer questions and he was a philosopher. Very cunning man. So, if he knew those things, then he also knows astrotheology. Then he knew sciences. He knew them. And the best part, he was metaphysical, meaning he could perform miracles. As we were sharing last time, power has no, it has no division, bifurcation. People think that the power of Satan is Satan. It is God's power. Become God. Yes, it's unbelievable. People think that Satan has his own power. You see, that's the problem of bifurcation. There is no bifurcation. We are all united. So power is one. It's just that how you channel the power matters. So Satan uses the power he has against God. That's what you need to know. But God highest. So even if Satan fights him, he'll win. God will win in the end. But however, some atheists say no, 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 no. That's not true. And I can agree with atheists to that extent, because atheists say if God has power, why is the world the way it is? It's so chaotic, it's so bad. Then that means Satan has power. You see? So I yes, it could mean Satan is more powerful than God because it's understandable. Because if you have a limiting God, you see, a limiting God is not a powerful God. A God who gives you laws, rules, don't do this, don't do that. No, he's not powerful. A God who tells you do anything. That's because there is nothing that stops you. See, that's why I laugh at Western science. They are so scared to do stem cell science because they don't want to play God. And I'm like, but you're a God. Yes, we are all gods. Do. We are gods. Don't limit yourself. They are limiting themselves because of religion. Yes, they are still, they say we don't want to even do stem cell science. You remember George Bush, because of his evangelical Christianity that he was loyal to, he could not allow stem cell science. It was discovered in his time, but he said no. We are evangelical and we can't play God. And yet the same Bible says we are gods. So, a scientist, though a lawyer, came in and he was doing science. Everything LGBTQ science is based on science. Stem cell science, he opened the door. It's Obama opened the door. Climate change science, Obama opened the door. You see? Then now Trump has come in. He's not. He's a tricky evangelical. He's not really an evangelical. He's just a. But he wants to pander to the evangelical wing of the country because I think they're holding him ransom. We gave you this seat, so you do things the way we want you to do them. And it's not that Trump was really evangelical. No, Bush was more of a born again. Not that you can't. Not that Trump is a funny man. Uh, he could be a funny man. He's not. What I mean, he doesn't wear his Christianity. People have been questioning when said, "Can you quote a verse?" He can't even quote one. So they are wondering, what did he read that book really? So that's what we've been wondering about Trump. And George Bush was different because he used to attend church and it was. So he was very evangelical. Not so much. It's just that what he's doing right now, he's pandering to the evangelical wing so that they can give him um, time. They can give him, they can get now. And now the problem of the evangelical thought is that your science is limited. It's limited what the Bible says. That's wrong. Never limit. You can know as much science is unlimited. You can as much as you want. I always like using this wall. It has very many particles, very small. That's science. You can write a whole book about this. The problem of that is the the people of the religious people cannot allow certain things. They have been limited by their religion. Even if they are scientific, they can't allow. That's why most religious can't do not allow homosexuality, not because of science, but because of their religion. The science is already there. Homosexuals exist even in animals. There is homosexual behavior. So that one, don't go to, don't go and ban homosexuality based on science. You can't. It's impossible. You can't. If you ban homosexuality, it is based on religion, and not religion, homophobic religion, because not all religions are homophobic. Hinduism is not homophobic. Canaanite religion, not homophobic. In fact, they glorify homosexuality. Ancient Egyptian religion, not homophobic. Many religions were not homophobic. So you can't really say it is religion, but rather homophobic religions, religions that don't like homosexuality. Those are the ones because of limitation. They have laws, limitation. Science is not limited, it's free. That's why the same brain that is the same one that can make a gun, power. That's what brought us here is the understanding of power. Power has no sides. It's just power. Because knowledge is power. So knowledge has no sides. It's just knowledge. For you to know this world, you don't know it. It doesn't need, you don't need to be gay, straight. You will know it. Yes, those are just labels. They have nothing to do with power. Yes, everybody has power. So that's what you need to know about the world. So I prefer to run by science, and this is what the Aquarian age is doing. So now, as we're finishing with the video, you have to go deep into that. And whenever it's philosophy and theology, we will talk a lot. And I want to finish in these 10 minutes on the language part because this is what I want to focus on. And language is going in the world, in the Aquarian age, is going through change. That's what you need to understand. Secondly, you need to understand everything that exists evolves. Now, some people, you never forget the lawyer's proverb: for every general rule, there's an exception. So, not is reason being, human life is 70 years. And sometimes for change to happen to something, it can take place in, sometimes it can't take place, like sexuality. See, that's why gay cure therapy doesn't work, because someone is gay from day one, from conception. So it's not, so don't, you're wasting time, you're even destroying someone's life if you try and attempt to change him. And then, sorry, you can't do anything because the brain is small. This was not my brain when I was a kid. Yes, this was not my brain. And even if my head could be similar to the size of when I was a kid, the brain had no connections. You see, you have to understand how the brain is made. There were very few connections. So yes. So the first 7 years, the brain is, it has very few connections. And that's when your sexuality is being defined. If you find somebody who says they are lesbian and they started being lesbian when they are 26, 80% that person won't be a lesbian a few years, because they are just bisexual. They've just realized they are bisexual. Yes, that's why they go off like that. But someone who had gay experiences when they were young, sorry, that one is gay. And give them their life. Don't hate them. Don't try and change Why are you changing a lion to become a horse? It's a lion. It was born a lion. So some things we are born with, other things we are not born with. Like dressing, we are not born with dressing. So I can choose to start wearing kimonos. Yeah, today I can wear a Western shirt because of the structures. Now, language can be changed. Much as language can stay changing. The same word it meant thousands of years ago has remained. Now that's a problem because if the language is not changing and things are changing, how are the people language understanding what's happening? You see, that's the issue we have in Africa is that there's a linguistic problem. The languages that Africans speak are developing their languages. I like the Basuga in Uganda. The they have a community that English it is not a dead language. So Lusoga is not a dead language. See whether they need to add new words to the system. Because languages assisting is a system. So you need to modify a system, especially conservative communities are found in societies that have dead languages. Can I tell you uh, another system that has a dead language? Christianity, Islam. Do you know what it means, dead language? You can't amend their books that they used to preach from. That's the problem. To explain something. Do you know Christians have the ability to change the Bible today? Yes. Muslims have the ability to change the Quran today. It's possible. They can add another book. They can even add 60 books. They can even say because it's an Aquarian, we're going to have an Aquarian Bible because the other Bible is a Piscean Bible. It has finished. It has served. Then you get the prophets of today. They write their books, and then you say that's now a new Bible. Yes, they were writing. That's why I've gone back to writing because it's power to write. You see, the writers of the Bible, they're the ones control 2 billion people. Because every time you have to argue with them, you are arguing with a writer who wrote 10,000 years ago. I mean, not 10,000, it's 4,000 years ago. The writer who wrote it 4,000, 3,000 years ago, roughly. Hinduism, you want to argue with Hindus because when you write, your work will remain forever. As many years will come. And if people use your laws, I mean your work, as laws, like what happened to the British Empire, they used the Bible as the to influence their laws. To write laws, they used the Bible. So that's what happened. It was confusion. They were not supposed to do that. The French Empire did not use the Bible to make laws. That's why they don't even have anti-homosexuality laws because that was not religion. They never used homophobic religion. They were a secular empire. Yes, religious empires, they tend to impose religious codes. So anyway, it's a very funny world we're living in. And so finishing the video, this is part one. Language. Language is going through changes. You see, even because we are beginning to discuss what do they mean. Even today I was thinking about sex. What is sex? Is sex defined from a patriarchal way or a matriarchal side? I believe sex is defined patriarchally. Yes, patriarchs. They divine because sex would mean when a penis enters an orifice. That is sex. So it is the penis. When there's no penis, patriarchs. If there's no penis, there's no sex. You see, so the problem is language. I believe language should be universal and uniacal. Uniacal meaning it has no sex. It is not about patriarchy, matriarchy. Because when you have language that is matriarchal, it will mean it will ignore the patriarchy. That. And if you have language as patriarchal, it means it ignores matriarchal language. Uniacal, uniarchy, you don't ignore the patri and the matri. You include them all and you put them as one. So there is a definition of sex, universal. But people as humans, they have their subjective definitions that can either be patriarchal or matriarchal. So what we are trying to advise now is, or what we are telling you to watch out for, is language is going through a lot of reformation because the age is changing. We are getting things. Okay, the age has already changed. We are already in Aquarian. It's just that we are throwing away a lot of the Piscean stuff we had. Not that all of it will be thrown away. Do you know there are some? You see things like sex. Sex is not Piscean. Eating is not Piscean. All ages people were eating. Even the so-called sin in the Garden of Eden was because of eating. They ate a wrong fruit. So eating, sex, appetites, they are what do you call it? Translinear. They're out of time. They're out of age. They will be forever in the age. Though for some religions, sex is not going to be trans. You know, sex only happens on earth, like Christianity. Islam, sex happens even in the afterlife. You'll have sex. So sex will take place in heaven. That's Christianity. Others believe, Islam believes sex will happen in heaven. So who's right? You see? So language for a good reason. And I always say this because remember I said this video, I got this point from somebody, and she was talking about the need of being sensitive, sensitivity, because there are minorities amongst us, there are disabled people amongst us, and so there's sometimes we'll have to be using is changing. People are beginning to talk about Twitter handle, philosopher, theologian, scientist handle. Actually, I now call it STP because in that channel I'm a scientist, I'm a theologian, and I'm a philosopher. So I'm an STP. So on my STP Twitter, um, this guy asked me a question and he said, "Why are why does is the word faggot still being used?" And I told him, um, the word faggot is like the word nigger. Only black on black use of the word nigger is allowed for a reason. It's the black is not known to subjugate, has no history of subjugating his black fellow in America. Not in Africa, it's different. Africans enslaved themselves, blacks enslaved some blacks. So that one is different. But in America, all the blacks who went there as slaves could not master their fellow brother. So that's why they can use the word nigger. There's no history of subjugation from a black person on a black person. But in the white black people. So if the white person uses the word nigger, he's act it's like cementing white superiority and glorifying black inferiority. So, because of that, the whites had to be told. You see, we are already in the Aquarian age, and it's been happening. Blacks had to tell whites, no, you guys are not going to use that word, because imagine seeing a white person call you nigger. It's derogatory. You know that the history is still there. And another thing I tell people about life, time is, you see, history. A historian is a futurist. That's the weird thing about life, time. And a futurist is a historian. So you can't run away from the past, neither can you run away from the future, and neither can you run away from the present. Because when I want to think about the future, I'm thinking about it in the present. When I want to think about the past, I'm thinking about it in the present. So they're connected. And the past used to be America. They didn't know that was going to happen. It happened. That was a future. So if they had prophets that time, the prophets would have told them, you're going to a far land. You're going to a far land. There's a story of an African prophet, a Kenyan, who had prophesied Obama's presidency in the 1900s. And he said that the son of that person, that our son is going to rule a far land, and when he's done with ruling that land will collapse or will have problems, and it'll go through. So this guy, that's what I'm trying to tell you, he had the ability to foresee an event that took place 100 years after the prophecy that he gave, and Obama became president. So the time he said that, it was it was a of the 1900s, 1910 actually, around there. That present time, and Obama's presidency was a future event. So he was a prophet. All prophets, all prophets, and the third sex prophets, because Daniel was a third sex prophet. You need to know the past, you need to know the future, and you need to know the present. When Daniel wrote about the Jews going back to Israel, he had to have read Jeremiah. And Jeremiah said that by the end of 70 years, and it happened that way. But Daniel even was buried in Persia. His tomb is there. And so he didn't go back home. So could it be that Jeremiah missed the plot? Could be. But I think where Jeremiah could have been right was that after 70 years, um, the Jews were allowed to go back because they had assimilated. They became so Babylonian that they now had a double citizenship of being a Babylonian and Israeli. So they could go back to Israel. That's when Nehemiah went back to Israel, Ezra went back to Israel, Ezekiel remained in exile. So all of these prophets, they they were reading the former prophets and trying to understand. You see, so beautiful to, it has its beauty there. So anyway, the Aquarian age, so language is changing. So I was talking about nigger. So the blacks took the effort to tell the white population, not in a bad way, in a good way. I remember Oprah saying that, even Maya Angelou. They are saying, I don't want to hear that word. Even they've reached to a point whereby the old blacks don't want to hear it, even from a black person, because of the memory. You see, the memory. That's what I'm telling you. The past is equals to the present, it's equal to the future. Time is one. It's made up of three parts: past, present, future. That's why I like watching time movies. Any movie that has talks about time, oh my goodness, give it to me. I'll watch it with all my heart. Um, so that's what happened. Then now with the word fagot, straight people cannot use it against gay people, because when you say faggot, you're actually saying it's time to kill a gay person, because the faggot means the sticks that were used to burn witches, is to burn. Yeah, they would burn them. So that's what the term faggot came from, the sticks that are on fire. And of course, gays use that word amongst, ourselves. We can say you're a faggot, and faggot basically means you don't use, you have sex without looking for money. That's faggotism. And this is what people need to understand about homosexuality. It's not like heterosexuality. It's very different, because you can even have sex without pay. Yes, you just have fun. So that is faggotism. And then there's another faggotism whereby you can have fun for any fee, even if somebody pays you less than $1. That is, and it also happens in the heterosexual world. You find prostitutes in the poor slums, they can even sell themselves for less than $1, because their goal is to get money to survive. So they can do anything, even if it's for little money. You see the hierarchy of economics? Yeah. So that's what I tell people. You can have sex without money, you can have sex for money. Yes, take what you want, do what you want. So now the word faggot was now used to refer to gay people. And so I told this guy that, you see, as time is going by, the language is going to reform. Like the word gay is in the Bible, King James Version. And he's saying wearing gay apparel. In the 1600, when the King James Version was written, the word gay meant soft. Yeah. Bright clothing. And I will do it in the theological channel about that word. It's in the King James Bible, but it's not talking about homosexuals. It's just talking about, and then even Jesus talks about effeminate clothing. Kings wear soft clothing. Yeah. So that's what is language. So in the 1600, gay was not connected to homosexual. But in the 20th century, that's when they connected the word to homosexual, because they didn't want to say the word homosexual. It sounded very, no one wanted to hear the word sex and homo at the same time. So they said, let's give a term. We call homosexuals gay. That's what happened. So the word changed. The pastor in Uganda, Martin Semper, was saying, no, the word it means happy. So why homosexuals do that? No, words go through evolution. Yes, what a word meant 2,000 years ago, the meaning can change. It's not that it will change, it can. It has the potential to change, but it doesn't have to change. It doesn't have to change. It can. So there are words that have changed and others that have not changed. So that's what you should understand about language. So what is happening now? Our language is changing. Now when language is going to change, my goodness, the world will change. You see, we're getting new words: blog, vlog, Google. If you go back to 1800 and you tell someone, Google for me this, they'll look at you and say, what are you saying? My God, have you come from another planet? When you go and tell somebody who is born in the 100 AD that I'm a blogger, these time travel movies, there are so many you can do. You can create a time travel movie whereby